Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Giridhara Dhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Giridhara Dhari Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivara Dhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivara Dhari Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Giridhara Dhari Jai Gopijana Vallabha Giridhara Dhari Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajadana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Indriyari Jaya Radha Madhava Indriyari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribrajacharya Ashtottara Sattva Siman is Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Premsi Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Sri Vasadi Sri Gaura Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Sama Veda Bhaktarinda Ki Jai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Sarasate Deve Gauravani Pacharini Nivishesha Sunyavari Paschachade Satarane Umangyanam Timurandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksurun Miritam Jainam Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Jayatam Suruto Pangur Mamma Mandamateragati Matsarvasvapadam Bujao Radha Madadamu Hano Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. This is something of a continuation from yesterday. I don't know how many of you have heard the first part of this. We'll try to fill in the blanks and people can ask questions. We are talking about what's called the term of art is hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is the how to understand Scripture. It's the original use. It comes from the word, the Greek god Hermes, the Latin Mercury, who's in charge of communication. So the principles of how to understand. So we're exploring how to understand Prabhupada's books. And we went through some of that yesterday, especially with regard to the Prabhupada's own instructions. Prabhupada said you have to take the medicine according to the directions on the bottle, and Prabhupada gave us directions. So we discussed that. So I've compiled a list from Srila Prabhupada's writings of 15 different hermeneutical principles. So I thought we'd go over those. The first one here, that knowledge conveyed through Shastra must be received from a qualified person in disciplic succession. Parampara, the word parampara means one after another. And of course we dealt with a lot of that yesterday. It's Prabhupada will describe this, as we'll see a little later, as realized knowledge. That is to say, based on one's own experience, and therefore there has to be a qualified person A qualified speaker is one who has been a qualified hearer. And that person must have heard from somebody else. And then, of course, it starts somewhere. The chain of teachers starts somewhere. Anyway, Prabhupada has emphasized very much that people have to be authorized persons, and that you cannot take Shastra and simply on the basis of grammatical knowledge or knowledge of Sanskrit or knowledge of history of religions or interpret it. You give a Freudian interpretation, a sociological interpretation, an historical interpretation, all these different ways of looking at Scripture, but it doesn't actually change anyone's life, enlighten them in any way, or free them from the bondage of birth and death. So there are all these different ways that people have of approaching these things. But Prabhupada called his book Bhagavad Gita as it is, which irritates some people. But we discussed yesterday how Prabhupada makes that case, although one person wrote a book called Bhagavad Gita as it was, just to bounce off of that one. You have to understand the Bhagavad Gita in a historical context, then speculating about when it was actually spoken or written down and so on. So this is the idea that we have here, that this idea of parampara, one after another, a chain of speakers, and as we'll see, it's controversial. When I was a kid, sometime in school, we had this game we played. We all sat in a circle and somebody said a sentence to somebody and it went around, and when it got back to the end, it was all different. To teach you that you can't believe anything, that people get changed. And so people will think that something like that, if the message has been passed down, when Prabhupada says something like, no change, I've spoken it just as I've received it and I haven't changed it. Well, how is that possible? So this is the first principle, that that knowledge is received from a qualified person in the succession, parampara, one after the other. And the second thing is that parampara has its origin in specific foundational paradigmatic experiences of divine revelation. Shastra contains the record of these experiences as well as of important subsequent instantiations of those experiences. So, for example, yesterday reading Srimad Bhagavatam, it was the third recitation of Bhagavatam. It had been passed down, that text as we have it has already got a record of three different times. When we are reading Bhagavad Gita, it's being spoken, but that's relating the early conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, that conversation, but now it's being again recited to Dhritarashtra. So it's been passed down. But where it starts, the Bhagavad Gita is Krishna's. He starts it. He speaks it. Although you notice that Krishna does a very interesting thing. He quotes a lot of the Upanishads. But still, because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he also has the authority to take that knowledge. And he then says, I spoke this a long time ago. In the Bhagavad Gita, I'm speaking it to you, but actually it was spoken a long time ago. And he tells an earlier transmission in the dynasty of the Surya Vamsha Kshatriyas. So so it's spoken or transmitted from a beginning, and what you have in Shastra is when the knowledge is conveyed, at least in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's somebody there who is receiving it. It is a transmission. And how that person heard it, received it, and accepted it, that also becomes a model for us. So Krishna is the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's hearing it, how he heard it, is the standard for receiving it. And then when it gets passed down, in the same way, the Bhagavatam is a series of speakers and hearers, and how they heard it is also stands as a model for the rest of us. So these when you say revelation, something is disclosed, something is opened up, something you didn't understand, you didn't know about, is shown to you, and well, we'll get to this part. You repeat the experience. It's not merely the recitation of words that somebody memorizes it and repeats it. They say, oh, well, we don't need parampara anymore, we have recording devices now. That doesn't do it. Something else is happening. There's a transmission of spiritual potency that goes along with these words. It changes the consciousness and turns us into people able to understand this and to take these original experiences and undergo them all over again. There shouldn't be any difference in parampara from hearing Bhagavad Gita. You should be able to have the same experience that Arjuna had. That's what has to happen. So therefore, we talked about this yesterday, when Prabhupada came with the Bhagavatams, part of that coming with Bhagavatam entailed starting ISKCON, because he had to be able to create the people who were able to hear. And it says one has to hear with rapt attention, but you can't hear with rapt attention unless you're pure in mind. And you can't be pure in mind unless you're pure in, as he said, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and all your activities of life. So Prabhupada had to have a system for creating people who were able to receive it. Otherwise, you can say it and nothing will happen. So he not only brought the Bhagavatams to the West, but he also gathered people together and said, now you have to stop taking intoxication. Otherwise you won't be able to hear. You have to be able to pay attention. Your mind can't be... Basically, a mind that's governed by the modes of passion and the modes of ignorance will not be able to hear with proper attention. All these people, the audience has to be created. this one after another, because those people who are the hearers then are expected to become the speakers to the next down the line. Our third point here is that parampara follows the understanding of revelation by certain great souls, the Mahajanas, whose realizations and actions are normative. They set the standard. This is how they heard, and this is what they understand. And there's a famous verse, you know, Tarako Pratishta. How do we know the truth, huh? Well, Tarka, logic, has no foundation. Tarko Apratishta. If you're looking for logic, well, of course, there's two kinds of logic. There's inductive and deductive. The problem with inductive is that it's based on counting. You can count 600,000 crows and they're all black. And you can say, therefore, all crows are black bird, but that's no guarantee that the 600,000th and first won't be a different color, green. You know? That's the problem of induction is always the difficulty. Deduction is better because if the premises are true, then it's sure and certain that the conclusion is true. The typical example of deduction, all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal, right? Induction is certain. But you don't like it? I'm Socrates and I don't like that, I'm mortal. I can say, how do you know all men are mortal? Have you seen everyone? Or, how do you know I'm a man? Maybe I'm a god. So all a deductive argument is tell the price you have to pay to deny the conclusion. So Tarka Pratishta. Shrutayo Vabhina. The scriptures are divided into different groups. You know, there's Puranas in the mode of goodness, Puranas in the mode of passion, Puranas in the mode of ignorance. So you can pick a scripture and say, this is, I follow, and somebody else, well, I'd follow this scripture. You know? I once had a Christian come into my office and say, you know, the Bible says, I said, this is my scripture. He couldn't say a word, you know. I hold up the Bhagavad Gita. Couldn't say a word. I believe this is the word of God. That was the end of that. Tariko Pratishta Shruta Nasavrashayata Matam. If you go to the rishis, the experts, they'll all disagree. No one can be a rishi if he just agrees. It's the same in academics today. If you just agree with everybody, your career is over. You have to find something new. The truths of religion, Dharmasha Tattvam, how does it go? The truths of religion are hidden in the hearts of great souls. Guhyam, Gahayam, yeah. Mahajanayena Gata. So you have to follow in the path of these Mahajanas. That's what it says. We mentioned the Mahajanas here. Their revelation, those people, the Mahajanas, we have a list of 12, but they're you know, we have people like in the Bhagavatam, Prahlad is a Mahajana, you know, how did he understand? These are normative people whose understanding, their realizations and their actions are normative. They set the standard for the rest of us, how we should understand. So that's all part of parampara, that it follows those understandings by great souls. How Arjuna heard the Bhagavad Gita, and so on. We go to the first, next part is that the purpose of parampara is to reprise the original revelatory experience. That is, the experience is recreated without loss or diminution in each generation. So that enlightenment that takes place, it should not be lost. Because what's transmitted is spiritual substance and experience knowledge. When Prabhupada said, Jnana Vijnanam Astikyam, you know, there's these two things. Jnana means book knowledge, but Vijnana means realized knowledge. And by realization, it's what you experience. And so Prabhupada writes that by really understanding Bhagavad Gita as we have gotten it, you can have the same experience and the same enlightenment that Arjuna underwent in the Battle of Kurukshetra. And it won't be less for you than it was for Arjuna. If you can be a hero like Arjuna, it will be there. The potency is not lost. So that's why disciplic successions are created, to be able to transmit not just words or ideas or theories or doctrines, but spiritual power, spiritual potency. Part of our philosophy is that we are taught, the Lord Chaitanya, especially Krishna and Krishna's name are the same. Well, abhinatva nama namanaha. There's no difference between the name and that which is named. In the relative world, my name and me are two different things. But when you come to the absolute truth, then Krishna and Krishna's name are the same. How can you understand that? Well, one has to hear purely and to experience Krishna's name as it actually is. When we have reached that point of purity and undivided attention, then we will also have that experience of Krishna being present in his name. Just like Krishna and Krishna's picture are the same. Krishna and Krishna's statue are the same. All these, this difference is not there in transcendence. And so, if we can say, if I can understand it, the Maha Mantra is names, 3 names of Krishna, but Bhagavatam is a name of Krishna. It's the big name. It's all of everything you want to know about Krishna in relation to different energies, different incarnations. Because for every activity that Krishna does, there's a name. He's Jamunatira Vanachari. He's the one who wanders in the groves on the bank of the Jamuna River. He's Yasodanandana. He's the lifter of Govardhan Hill. All of these are names of Krishna. Everything he does is a name. You put all those names together, it's still the same person. So that idea is there with Krishna, and Krishna's book are the same. His Bhagavatam or his Bhagavad Gita. So this is what parampara is supposed to do. So if we see here So to understand Shastra, first we just have to understand the words, just the propositions, what's being said correctly. Sometimes we have to have good translations and accurate depictions of what the words mean. And then the other thing that when we call understanding Shastra is the unmediated apprehension of transcendence. See, when I see through words, that's a mediation. The word is a medium, right? We use that term for the media because it's a medium. But when there is transcendence, the medium disappears. It's no longer Krishna and Krishna's name are the same. It doesn't mediate between anything. So it's unmediated, direct perception. Pareshanubhava, direct perception of the Supreme. That's what we should see. So that's what's conveyed through Shastra. And the reason to understand just the words on the page and what they say is to attain the second kind of understanding. So that's what we aim to deliver. We aim to take ourselves and everyone else into the direct presence of Krishna. Any questions so far, or doubts or confusions or whatever? Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So thanks for the wonderful, so far lecture. I look forward to more. So the quick question with respect to Krishna's name being same as himself.
Mm-hmm.
Name is a manifestation of sound, and sound is a representation of an act that happens in ether, and ether is a material concept. So how would the name be understood as something to be divine? And Krishna says, the follow-up to this question is, Krishna says that or basically Bhagavatam says that when the material world was created by Mahavishnu and all those things, Krishna still kept himself aloof of it. He's not really part and parcel of the material world. I mean, it's created from Krishna, but he's still not, he's in it and he's still not in it. So the name being something that is created from ether, if that is a correct understanding, how is it that like divine?
Well, it's called a nam avatar. You know, Krishna descends in the form of the name. We should have to, Prabhupada, we are all working after a certain understanding that Lord Chaitanya presented, which actually unifies all the Vaishnava Sampradayas. This is this idea of Achincha Bheda Bheda Tattva. Nothing is different from Krishna. Yet Krishna is different from everything. There's two ways to say this, I've just from looking at how Prabhupada presents it. One is nothing is different from Krishna, yet Krishna is different from everything. The other way Prabhupada puts it is there's nothing but Sri Krishna, yet nothing is Sri Krishna save and except his own primordial personality. It's called a chincha. It's inconceivable. But what's inconceivable? You can't conceive of him as one. You can't conceive of him as different. That's one way to look at it. And the only thing, what I've done for myself is I, just took this, like, how sometimes Zen Buddhists, they meditate on a koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping and whatever. My koan is nothing is different from Krishna, yet Krishna is different from everything. One time I was with Srila Prabhupada in New Vrindavan. he was there, and there was a festival or something. And I was with some other members of the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and we were walking. He was on a walk. And as we were walking, Prabhupada started talking about how the woods, we are in the woods, there are trees everywhere. This wood, although it's wood, is actually just another form of fire. Because the trees take in the sunlight and transform it into wood. But it's actually sunlight in another form. If you take the wood and you ignite it, the fire will come back out again. So in the same way, everything is actually spirit, he said. So at that point, I got a little bewildered. And when I had a chance, I could ask Prabhupada a question. And I said to him, and I was a fairly new devotee, I said to Prabhupada something like, that I'm trying very hard to distinguish between matter and spirit. I want to understand, aham brahmas, I am a spirit soul, I'm not the body. So my effort right now is to understand the difference between myself and my body, so I'm distinguishing between matter and spirit. So that's what I'm doing. But now you're telling me everything is spirit. So now I'm confused. And it took me a couple of years to understand Prabhupada's answer. His answer was, we are not Mayavadis. He said, there are different kinds of spirit. So that we have to think of it or you can think of it this way. Krishna himself can change matter to spirit and spirit to matter back and forth. So when he chooses to use what sounds like a material sound vibration to convey a spiritual truth, that's now as good as and he's actually in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a really, really interesting purport where what is that verse? Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, you know the number? Anybody?
424.
Huh?
Chapter 424.
424, thank you. Have you ever looked at Prabhupada's purport on that one? It's really an amazing purport. I'm sure you've read it, but we look at it closely. So that text, there's an interesting history of that text because of the way it's translated. Because if you look at the text, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagna Brahmanahutam, this is listing all the ingredients in a fire sacrifice. And it's saying, when you have the fire sacrifice, everything becomes Brahman. Right? That's what it says. When Prabhupada translates it, he said, a person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. That's practically like a purport. And in Prabhupada's manuscript, this was the translation and it was the first line of the purport. And if you see the original Bhagavad Gita that was published by Macmillan that Hayagriva edited, he put in somebody else's translation. So we brought it back to what it originally was. So what Prabhupada is talking about is how, listen, I'll just read it. It says, the materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna. So he's taking a verse which is about a fire sacrifice. But now the whole process of Krishna consciousness is a yajna. So what happens when there's a yajna? Activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness, or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. That's almost like another translation. By complete absorption. So the word Brahman means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyoti. But when the Jyoti is covered by illusion, Maya, or sense gratification, three synonymous words, illusion, Maya, and sense gratification, covers the Jyoti, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, and here's a translation of the verse again. The offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the absolute truth. The absolute truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter, dovetailed for the cause of the absolute truth, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. So Krishna consciousness is the process of the re-spiritualization of matter. So actually, when that happens, the material world is as good as the spiritual world. Everything that can be achieved there can be achieved here. And the words we use, everything we do also becomes spiritualized. This becomes spiritualized. It wasn't created for a spiritual. I mean, somebody is going, shake it up, baby, twist and shout. You know, that's material. But what we're using it for is very different. And it's a different thing. It becomes spiritualized. So Prabhupada concludes, when the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance, Brahma karma samadhina, that's the last line in this verse. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice for the absolute. And that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. It's worth reading and thinking about this purport for a very long time. So that's how everything is spirit. It's ultimately spirit. And if we don't see it, then because it's covered by illusion or matter of sense gratification, the idea that I am the enjoyer of this. Sense gratification is the act of atheism. I may say I believe in God, I believe in Krishna, but if something is for my sense gratification, I'm alienating Krishna's property and I'm converting spirit into matter by my overlay of material activities. So our process, the opposite, to do the difference, to make this difference happen. Yeah? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. We are talking about parampara, and we, in the discussions, 4 paramparas, we discuss, which start from Lakshmi, Brahma, 4 Chatus Kumaras, and Rudra. But you are also mentioning that Arjuna, the experience which we get, and that we should also feel it. And even Krishna says that now, Arjuna, I am giving this knowledge to you, and he mentions how the different Rajarshis
Yeah.
got. So, but in our usual discussions, we don't talk about that line, the parampara, where the kings were involved. So, are they still extant, or?
Apparently, we don't see Rajarshis anymore, huh? It's being passed down now by a different means. If we revive saintly kings, that would be very nice. But that's my understanding. You know, this was. Remember this Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is when Krishna was here. Kali Yuga was about to begin. And then it became a real question for the sages at Naimisharanya forest who heard about, what do we do about Kali Yuga now? This is going to happen. How do we prepare for it? What do we? And of course, the sacrifice they decided to do was hearing and chanting about Krishna. The Sankirtan was the sacrifice. It prefigured this. Yeah, the Surya Vamsha Kshatriyas and the Chandra Vamsha, where they are, we don't know. We don't know where that is. At least I don't know. Maybe they'll come about again. Okay, so we continue. Anything else? So when we look at the sixth point here, that parampara contains a system of applied knowledge to effect the personal transformation of its members so that they gain the qualification to receive those experiences of transcendence conveyed through parampara. So that should be clear enough, that's why we have when Prabhupada says you have to hear with rapt attention, you can't hear with rapt attention unless you're pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's where our spiritual principles, and what I'm going to talk about a little later on, is the fact that these principles, which are usually thought of in the category of moral principles, are actually noetic principles, the principles of knowledge, part of a science. And it's unfortunately that's not recognized anymore. So we know how what one has to have the qualifications to receive those experiences of transcendence and to undergo them oneself. The substance of parampara is the conveyed unbroken flow of spiritual energy that purifies, sanctifies, and illuminates its members. That experience should be there. One should feel what should be happening if we're practicing Krishna consciousness. We should see, first of all, that lust and greed and anger should be diminishing. It should be going down. Prabhupada said once in a class I heard, he says, if they're not, you're doing something wrong. So it's, you know, we know what lust feels like, we know what greed feels like, we know what anger feels like. These are clinical signs of spiritual progress that they go down. Knowledge depends upon sattva, goodness. And so this, we should see these things disappear. Yeah, that should be the first thing we should notice, that these are going away. Because at least in the material mode of sattva, we can begin to understand Bhagavad Gita. And then, of course, there's Vishuddha sattva, purified goodness, when advance even further. Next point, only when Shastra is expounded and transmitted in parampara does it maintain its original meaning and purpose. So sometimes when Prabhupada stresses that he just speaks it as it is and that we're not supposed to speculate and just repeat this, some people say, oh, this sounds like fundamentalism, you just what the book says and I just believe it. But that kind of fundamentalism usually doesn't have any kind of sustained spiritual experience behind it. And at least my experience with fundamentalists was a tendency toward fanaticism. And what fanaticism is, when I've seen it in the Krishna consciousness movement also, I mean, fanaticism is an overcompensation for a lack of faith. When you see somebody that's really fanatical, and often they'll do certain things like emphasize minor over major virtues. I knew one person who was a devotee who was always flipping out because the editors changed something in Prabhupada's books. But his big problem was he had a cocaine habit. But he could be outraged because they're, so a lot of times you see these things that people become fanatical about something and strident about certain aspect of things, and you can always look and see that there's some other problem going on that they don't want to deal with or can't deal with it. Yeah, that's that. People will do all kinds of different things like that in any spiritual movement where they're not. See, the problem is, of course, it's difficult, and we have good days and we have bad days, and maybe we have good years and we have bad years. The point is that one has to be honest. And frank, at least with oneself, about what we're going through, and not get on some various crusades for simple things, so I can not pay attention to what my real problem is. So these other points, that this parampara conveys knowledge that's not conditioned by human limitations. This is Prabhupada's claim. It's not human-produced knowledge, therefore free from the 4 defects that vitiate the knowledge of human production. Another point that Prabhupada makes, Shastra must be accepted as it is. These are people, its authority must be respected. There must be no additions, no subtractions, and no distortions. When Shastra is so understood, the meaning of Shastra becomes self-evident. Swata pramana. We'll talk about that more later on. Swata pramana. And the text becomes self-luminous. We want to talk about that experience of self-evidence, and what it means. If you have any questions at any of this, raise your hand right away, okay? Just don't wait for me to ask. Go ahead.
I had this question about 4 defects, and there is a reference in Chaitanya Charitamrita where these 4 defects Kaviraj Goswami mentions. But I was wondering where, in which are the Vedic scripture does it come from?
No, I don't know. No, I never traced it down.
Some of us...
Name the 4 defects, right? Go
Yeah.
ahead. What are the 4 defects?
The tendency, your senses are imperfect.
Yeah, our senses are imperfect, right?
We get illusion, cheating propensity, and tendency to make mistakes.
Yeah, we make mistakes, cheating and illusion. Yeah.
Even in the purport also, Prabhupada doesn't mention Vedanta.
No, it's there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I never try to track it down any further. One thing is about Lord Chaitanya, he's a good authority. It's interesting that happened when Krishna comes, like when Lord Chaitanya comes, somebody like that. You're right at the beginning again, and that was fairly recent when you speak of the time scale. So those kind of things, I just never thought to see where else they came from. It could be tracked down, but because probably some other place. It's maybe there in the Upanishads somewhere like that. Yeah, you had a question or comment?
So you said how when we receive the information through parampara, then all these symptoms of anartha should go away. So, and we also read that, as Prabhupada says, that 16 rounds of chanting is sufficient to go back to Godhead. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is all the reading that we do is to help us to do that with more conviction, mm-hmm. and all that. But even when we try to do that over years, but when a provoking situation comes, we slip. And then it really feels so bad to us, like how come it happened. So we have the faith in the Apichetha Sudharacharo and we move forward, but still there is a question that why because the faith, it doesn't get shaken, but you still question yourself, like where was the fault. So with what deep conviction that one should do that it will never happen again, so that we move fast and forward.
Well, first of all, if we are following the process and we run into some difficulty, sometimes we can see what was the occasion of it. You can avoid certain things, and one should look. Sometimes you don't know. You can't see that you did anything wrong, and things suddenly got rough. Maybe a bad planetary configuration or something out of your control like that. When those kind of things happen, at least for me, is think, the only shelter I have is really the holy name. And one has to cry very sincerely to the holy name to be delivered. And sometimes a bad experience may help us cry even more sincerely. And you can take advantage of it. Sometimes you can use a negative situation or negative energy to achieve a positive result. And anything that helps me become more humble is useful. That's one thing, because we advance by becoming humbler. And the more we understand that humility is actually realism, the better off we are. I remember once listening to a tape of Prabhupada on a morning walk, and some devotee said to him, "Prabhupada, how can I become humble?" And you could, from his tone of voice, it was sort of, how can I, with my good looks, my whatever, my riches, my intelligence, how can I think myself in the unnatural and artificial position of humility? It was like almost like that. It's so hard. Humility is so unrealistic, but actually you can understand that humility is realism, and that if I have trouble becoming humble, I should become humble because of that, because it means I'm proud, and that's a fault. So we should pursue humility, and whenever there's difficulties, where we ultimately go to shelter. I mean, we may have to take some other remedial measures, but it is to intensify our activities of hearing and chanting. And if we're the advancement of Krishna consciousness, there may be many steps, but my conviction is that Krishna will always let us know the next step. And that's all we need to know, is the next step. What do I have to do next? Now, in order to have Krishna guide us clearly, we have to want to take that step. If I keep asking, what is the next step, and he shows me and I don't do it, you may find it a little hard to find out what the next step is. So one has to be really, to make advancement, just to take that next step. And that's all we really need to know, the whole thing. If you look at the whole thing and go, you know, and it sometimes looks hard. I mean, even Prabhupada said, you know, that at a certain point he mentions in public lectures, not private conversation, that at a certain point Bhakti Siddhanta appeared to him in dreams and told him to take sannyas. And Prabhupada said, I was horrified. That was his reaction. I was horrified. Oh no, I have to take sannyas. But he did it. But so sometimes, you know, that next step may look wow, how can I do that? You know, how can I disentangle me from this and that and the other thing? But if you know what the next step is, and you can break that down into smaller steps, you know, and eventually you'll find you're making progress. And Krishna will help. He's not really in the business of stopping us from advancing in Krishna consciousness. And when Krishna helps us, we can feel that, and that's super encouraging. That we're not, that's not our only endeavor, and that Krishna really wants us back very, very badly, and He's giving us all the means. Krishna is not in the business of stopping our spiritual advancement. Quite the opposite. You can't blame it on Krishna. And if you're in this room, that means Krishna's already made some arrangement for your spiritual advancement. It won't be the same for each of us what the next step is, but we all can take that step. And we should do that. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. I had a question. Sometimes I meet people that they don't like Prabhupada's translation of Bhagavad Gita, and they prefer another translation from such and such author. I was just wondering, is that because of their own selfish motives? They're trying to get something else out of it. They don't want to surrender.
I can't answer in general what that is for people. A lot of times it would be that, because Prabhupada's saying what Krishna says, surrender to me, and people don't want to hear that. People like to read the Bhagavad Gita and derive a Mayavad conclusion. Before I met devotees, and before I had Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, I had read the Bhagavad Gita, I think 3 times in Hinduism courses. I was in graduate religious studies, and my first teacher, I took 3 Hinduism courses, and my first Hinduism teacher was Swami Nikalananda. Swami Nikalananda ran the Ramakrishna mission in New York. He's a scholar, you know, he translated the Upanishad. He was a qualified academic in some ways. And this was at Temple University in Philadelphia. I got interested in religion after being in philosophy and English literature. And religion departments were like a new thing. They were just starting up. And so the Temple University started one. And they had the idea that the professors not only should be academically qualified, but they should have some kind of experiential involvement also with religion. So anyway, that's how Swami Nikalananda came down twice a week to teach from New York City. He wore a three-piece pinstripes. It looked like a 1930s English barrister, you know, the vest, and even he had a pocket watch, you know, a pocket. And so, you know, I read his Bhagavad Gita, and then all three Hinduism courses were taught by Bengalis, by the way. So I'd read different translations by different people, all of them following, one way or the other, the Ramakrishna mission version of Hinduism. So the last time I read the Bhagavad Gita, we were using this Penguin Book One Mascaro translation, which is a little better than the others in that way. And while I was reading it, I thought I discovered that what the Bhagavad Gita is really saying is surrender to Krishna. I thought that was my original discovery. I really did. And I looked at it again, you know, yeah, that's what it's really saying, is surrender to Krishna, you know. And that's not, I was supposed to write a paper on the ethics of the Bhagavad Gita, and there was a particular dharma and a swadharma, your swadharma and your universal dharma. When there is a conflict, you follow your swadharma. That's what the ethics, that was what our teacher, based on Srinivas Das Gupta's, this was his widow who wrote his books, who was the teacher. Anyway, he had a 5-volume history of Indian philosophy, you know. I put that in my paper, and for that reason I didn't get an A, because I said that. That's how much about. And by the way, what I did was, when I thought I said surrender to Krishna, I thought, you know, if that's what it says to do, I'm going to do that. And I went like this. I was at the kitchen table with the book in front of me. I went, surrender, surrender, surrender. And I looked up, nothing happened. But I did do that. And within a month, I'm walking across campus and I hear ching, ching, ching. So Krishna makes a rainbow, and I really did that, or surrender. You know, I didn't have any idea how to do it, and I thought nobody else understood the Bhagavad Gita like that but me. So there's many translations, and people have covered it over with different things, and may have different reasons for not liking Prabhupada. I can't say what it may be. Yeah. Anything else on this? We should. These last ones are kind of clear. What are we on, number 13? Huh? 11. Okay. Yeah, so Shastra is a coherent whole. That's something that Prabhupada teaches. They all agree. And reconciliation of apparently disparate texts is effected through reference to the Siddhanta, the single highest aim. So that there's a procedure. If it seems like different things are taught, you see what the highest aim is. And some because, you know, it's a step-by-step matter. And for some people, for example, there may be texts that glorify impersonal Brahman. Okay, well that's something, that's getting there. Other texts talk about, super soul realization. But we know how to organize them and how to reconcile them in a harmonious way that leads up to the ultimate Siddhanta. That's something that comes with this understanding. So there is a thing that's called the Siddhanta, the single highest aim. And on this matter, we're following the authority of Lord Chaitanya, ultimately. 12, interpretation of text is required only in particular instances where the meaning is not clear. This is what Prabhupada says. If interpretation imposes something new, it blocks the self-luminosity of Shastra. So Prabhupada says this somewhere that, the meaning is not clear, then you can see different readings. And if you look at the purports of different acharyas, they may give different ideas. They're all right. The texts are sometimes they have multiple meanings at the same time. And all those that are consistent apply in different ways in different times. Even Prabhupada will take the same text and in one context read it one way, in another context read it another way. The purpose of explanation and exposition is only to remove obstacles to the realization of self-evidence, the swata pramana. It's self-luminous. So if something is self-luminous and we can't see it, then it must be there's something blocking it. So if we get rid of the blockages, then it'll come through. And so we'll talk more about this swata pramana later this afternoon. The perception of the self-luminosity of Shastra is part and parcel of the direct experience of the divine that parampara conveys. So this is where Prabhupada's conviction comes from. It's not just that he's got some dogmatic adherence that he's following, but that actually he has the experience of this self-luminosity of Shastra. And finally, realized knowledge, we talked about this a lot yesterday, realized knowledge, enables one to explain Shastra in a way comprehensible to hearers conditioned by time, place, and circumstances, while yet completely preserving the integrity of Shastra. So it has to, as Prabhupada writes, it has to be suitable for a particular audience with that audience's own the amazing thing is that Prabhupada was able, he'd never been out of India, his English education was basically Victorian English. It was not even the American English that we speak nowadays. It was like, God, he really knew Wordsworth well, and plain living and high thinking comes from a Wordsworth poem. He knew the Victorian poets very well, and so the experience of English and English culture was not American. It was British. But somehow or other he came to America, and there were these young kids, and somehow or other he could see wherever do something and get them to start doing things, and here we are. So he also had that realized knowledge, and it can be done. Okay, any more questions about this? Yeah.
You were saying how if different acharyas say different things on the same topic, that they're all correct. Can you explain that a little further? Because I was questioning that myself every time I read.
I wish I could think right now of a particular example, because I do that right now. I will read Prabhupada's commentary, and I'll read what Vishwanath Chakravarti. And sometimes, see, Prabhupada had, the edition of the Bhagavatam he had all these different acharyas there, and then Prabhupada would say something, and he would kind of like pick from them, follow one or the other, what I really need to have is a concrete example, and I can't think of any right now. Unfortunately, if you find one, bring it to me. Even a mundane work that's particularly rich will have multiple meanings. If you have a really good English poem, for example, different people will be able to get different things out of it and see different things that are there simply because it's very well done. That's common enough. The Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita are better than that. And so if it was, the word they use, the term of art is polysemous, that has multiple meanings that are there in the text. Some of them are contradictory to the conclusion. Some of them don't fit in the context. But many of them will do that. And a lot of times you'll find that Prabhupada actually in his commentary is reconciling what different previous commentators had said. He will mention that. Yeah? Can you think of an example? That'd be good. Yeah, thank you.
So I think it comes in when Parikshit Maharaj is going to sit at the bank. So Vishnu Chakra Thakur is saying that's bank of Ganges, and Jiva Goswami says that no, that's Yamuna, it was too far away. But then Prabhupada, I think, reconciles and says that makes sense, Yamuna, because it was holier than Ganges.
That's right, there was something like that, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, that will happen. And if you run into something that gives you a difficulty, you can always ask somebody else who's more experienced or more knowledgeable about these things. Anything else? We show, okay, it's 4:30 and we should take a break maybe, huh? Have a little chanting and have a little kirtan. Use the bathroom, whatever, and then we'll get on our next part of this discussion. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We have a copy of this list if you want it. It's not copyrighted, not yet anyway. Want to leave the kirtan? Just wait a minute. Hare Krishna.
Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri, everyone, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Radhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Nadiya Nagare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Nadiya Nagare Nadiya Nagare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Altogether, Jagannath Sutta Mahaprabhu Vishvambar. Altogether, Mayapura Shashi Navadvipa Sudakar Shachi Sutta Gaurahari Nimai Sundar Radha Bhava Kanti Achadita Nataba Namananda Chapala Balaka Matribhakta Brahmananda Varna Tarki Katu Kanurak Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche. Change it. Vidyarthi Udupa Chara Dwayer Mohan Kartika Sarvasya Gramya Balika Kridan Lakshmi Prati Bodha Datta Udata Balaka Shishachira Pati Putra Shoka Nibara Lakshmi Pati Purva Desha Sarva Klesha Hara Digvijay Tarpahari Vishnu Priyashva Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Arya Dharma Pala Pitra Gaya Pinda Data Puri Shishya Madhvacharya Sampradaya Pata Krishna Namon Mata Krishna Tattva Abhyapaka Nam Sankirtan Juga Dharma Pravata Advaita Bandhava Srinivas Grihadana Nityananda Prana Gadadhara Rajivan Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Antartik Shashadar Simanta Vijay Godruma Bihari Madhya Dipa Lila Shrai Kola Dipa Pati Ritu Dipa Maheshwar Janu Moja Duma Rudra Tripera Ishwar Navakanda Rangana Jana Vijivana Jagai Marai Adi Durvrita Charan Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Nagara Kirtana Simha Kaji Udarana Shudanam Pracharaka Bhaktarti Harana Narayani Kripa Sindhu Jivera Niyanta Adhama Paduya Dandi Bhakta Doshahanta Shri Krishna Chaitanya Chandra Bharati Karana Parivrashira-muni Kalapavan Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Ambulinga Bhuvanesha Kopatesha Pati Kirchor Gopadashana Sukiyati Nirdandi Sanyasi Sarva Bhoma Kripa Moy Swananda Swanandi Sarva Sukashoy Purata Sundara Vasudeva Tranakarta Ramananda Saka Bhatta Kula Trishahar Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Nadia Nagari Nitai Niche Gai Boda Jain Mayavadi Kutarka Kandan Dakshina Pavana Bhakti Granta Udarana Alalada Shanandi Ratagranartaka Gajapati Trana Devananda Udharaka Tuliya Prakashe Dusha Padurya Archana Rupasana Tana Bandhu Sarva Jiva Pran Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Gare Nitai Niche Niche Vrindavana Nanda Murti Balabhadra Sangi Yavana Udari Bhatta Bala Berarangi Kashi Vasi Sanyasi Udari Prema Data Markata Varagi Dandi Achandala Trata Bhaktera Gaura Bhakari Bhakta Pranadana Haridas Raghunath Svarupa Jivan Narayana Kare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Kare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Godruma Pati Gaur Nitai Jivan Vrindarana Baba Narayana Kare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Kare Nitai Niche Niche Bhakati Vinotar Pode Ranga Pade Nari Nadukar Niche Niche Gaire Narayana Kare Nitai Niche Niche Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada. Nadia Nagare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Nadia Nagare Nitai Niche Nadia Nagare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Nadia Nagare Nitai Niche Niche Gaire Go Premanande.
So I want to talk the rest of this thing about what's really has status, is important in life, in our culture, is material science. And one of the things that Prabhupada really wanted us to do, in which we had a Bhaktivedanta Institute to do, was to establish Krishna consciousness with the same degree of prestige and interest that material science currently has. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, because that's our job. That's our job. And he called Krishna consciousness a science, one book titled Science of Self-Realization, and been criticized for trying to expropriate, the prestige of science for our own dubious project. But when Prabhupada talked about science, he had a particular word in mind, word in mind, was vijnana. Jnana vijnanam. Astikyam. This is what Brahma. Jnana means theoretical knowledge, and vijnana means experienced or practical knowledge. And in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that word is used. Krishna says to Arjuna, idam tu te guhyatamam pavakshyam yanasuyave jnana vijnana sahitam yajnatva mokshayase ashubhat. So he says, because you aren't envious of me, you're willing to listen to what I have to say, and Prabhupada translates, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization. So by realization, that's vijnana. Means it's practical experience knowledge. When in the BI we wanted to have a journal, Prabhupada said, call it savijnanam. Is vijnanam. Science, that's the word that's used for science, is vijnana. Is experience knowledge. And what will be the benefit of this science? Relieved of the miseries of material existence. Well, that's something. I mean, most science is to improve our lives in some way, to raise our standard of living, to stop the course of disease. I mean, that's the whole industry, is to relieve us of the pains of material existence. So here's the saying it's a science. It can be done, and I'm going to tell it to you. And then next verse, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam. This knowledge, this Vidya, is the king, is the highest, the sovereign Vidya. And it's also the highest, he calls it Guhyam, a confidential. Now, that doesn't mean, when something is confidential, Prabhupada has described, it means that not everyone will be able to appreciate it. How many people who use computers actually know how to encode computers, right? To write code. Not very many. It's confidential. Just because it's confidential doesn't mean it's not science. It's like some esoteric hidden, that's... No, it means that not everybody's qualified. It's a good thing it's confidential. If it's, if I know it, how can it be so secret, right? Anyway, so he says, he calls it guhyam, confidential knowledge, but not everyone can appreciate it. That's all. But that's science. Any science is like that. At a certain level, you have to be trained and educated in order to be able to make your way around in it. Then he says it is pavitram, pure. Uttamam, Prabhupada translated is transcendental. Pratyaksha avagamam damyam. This word pratyaksha, literally right in front of the eyes, direct experience. It gives direct experience. That's what people are looking for. Direct experience of what? Direct experience of the self. And susukam kartam, it's fun to do. You can say it's pleasant, it's nice. So any this science that relieves us of the miseries of material existence, that is actually fun to do, that is the highest knowledge, people should go for it. So what are the obstacles for this kind of thing? But by the way, Prabhupada was quite serious about this as a science. Early on, Prabhupada recalls being invited to talk to the MIT in Cambridge. His audience, by the way, was professors and graduate students. He said that when I lectured at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, I asked the students, where is the technology to study the soul, the mover of the body? They had no such technology. I mean, why don't you have a department for the soul? I mean, can you imagine these MIT people, the Department of Soul? He out of his mind, you know? They could not answer satisfactorily because their education was simply jada vidya. Jada. You know what jada means? Huh? Ignorant and dull knowledge, or knowledge of matter, jada vidya. He calls it jada vidya. The Isha Upanishad says that those who engage in the advancement of such materialistic education will go to the darkest region of ignorance, of existence. Therefore, the present civilization is in a very dangerous position because there is no arrangement anywhere in the world for genuine spiritual education. In this way, human society is being pushed to the darkest region of existence. So, what we are doing here today, people, you know, this is religion. You know, over there they have science, here we have religion, they have knowledge, we have belief, because we've gone through a process which historians call secularization. You know, the religion is okay, but it has its place. It really shouldn't interfere with the real interesting things like making money and gaining political power and so on. I mean, people want to change that somewhat, but everybody's a little afraid of that. And you have all over, if you may notice, this rise of fundamentalisms. You know, in America we have the Christian fundamentalists, and we have the Hindutva people in India, and we have the Muslim fundamentalists. You may notice this is happening, huh? Because people are really, how to say, at a loss with modern civilization. Where is it going and what it's bringing about? But so far, all they can present is something that looks very much like various forms of fanaticism, and with a violent edge to it. Yeah. Usually means if you're one thing, you hate somebody who's not, whatever it may be, whether you're a Hindu fundamentalist, a Muslim fundamentalist, Jewish fundamentalist. You know, if you're not that, they hate you. So people are a little afraid of that. And that's our secular, you know, so far material progress is done by this secularization. It hasn't satisfied everybody in every way. And now you have these kind of reactions taking place. So the idea is that we want to present is the idea of presenting Krishna consciousness not as a particular religion. Prabhupada never thought it was a particular religion. Dharma doesn't mean this religion or that religion. It means our natural way. The idea of this is how to have knowledge of spirit that's scientific. Where's the technology to study the soul, the self, the mover of the body? Now, what reigns now is modern material science. Now, modern science performs an initial act of abstraction. It abstracts from the world in terms of quantity. You can measure things, and a great deal of the world can be dealt with in terms of numbers. But you have performed an act of abstraction. You ignored quality, and you've just got numbers. And that's one thing. It's useful to do that. Nobody disagrees with dealing with the world in terms of numbers. But then you go from science to scientism. And I'd say scientism is an ideology that if it can't be expressed in terms of numbers, it doesn't exist. And that also has been done. It doesn't exist. And they tell a story that at the beginning of, as far as they know, there were simple, very simple structures of matter, completely describable in terms of numbers. And then these structures of matter started to become more complicated. You know, there was the subatomic particles, and then they, gradually came together, and then you got atoms, and first you had the quarks and charm quarks and whatever, mystical things come out when you ram particles into each other at more and more fast speeds. But the simple structures of matter, completely explainable in terms of numbers. Then they get more complicated, right? Now, why that happens, I don't know. I mean, time has been defined as the direction of entropy. But what you're getting, and this is the opposite of entropy. You're going from, you're getting more and more organized. And so they just say, well, we're in some anti-entropic branch system for some reason. So these structures of matter, completely describable in terms of numbers, they get more complicated. And so, then you end up with atoms, and then atoms make molecules, and then there's carbon atoms, and then you start to get big molecules, and then at a certain point, something interesting happens, that not only do you have complicated structures of matter, but you have something, the experience of structures of matter. That's right, because we're talking about them, right? There's experience of structures of matter. And the big problem is what to do with that anomalous thing, the experience of, because the experience of structure of matter is not another structure of matter. And in fact, if you look at the structure of matter, completely expressible in terms of numbers, there's no room for the experience of structures of matter. You can't even talk about it. And people who are rigorous material scientists have been trying to not deal with it. Write it off as an illusion, but it's there. And this is what we call consciousness. The matter has become animated, and then you get evolution, you get life forms, and then those get more and more complicated, and that's how things come about. The only anomaly is the experience of structures of matter, what we would call consciousness. When I say consciousness, I simply mean the ability to undergo experiences. This cup is it's a thing, right? You can completely describe it in terms of numbers, exhaustively, presumably, right? It's an object in space, and it's sitting here. But it's wholly an object. Also, my body is a somewhat more complicated structures of matter, but I'm not just an object, I'm a subject. I undergo experiences. I have significance for myself. This cup only has significance for others. How does that happen? It's the big mystery for everybody. Now, Bhagavad Gita tells us this is what happens, that Krishna has two energies, Bina Prakriti, Ashtada, and another energy, and the confluence of these two energies, they come together, and the world arises. The para and apara Prakriti. Right? They come together, and they're together. But this consciousness, this ability to undergo experiences, this doesn't come out of the matter. It's just they're together. I mean, this is Sankhya philosophy. They're together, but this is a different energy, and they're just associated with each other like this. Together, we are inhabiting various kinds of bodies. It's becoming a revelation to people that actually animals undergo experiences. They have significance for themselves. They have their own lives. And we don't know how, And people, at least something's happening. I think chanting of Hare Krishna, people are beginning to take that seriously, At least people may have their own things. People have begun to notice that they have languages, that they have talked to each other. It was just a big revelation that I read about a year ago where elephants have feelings. Now, I was in Mayapur when one of the elephants died and the other was crying. I mean, tears are rolling down the eyes of this elephant. Obviously, this is like news to people. That the animals are undergoing, they have their own lives and they have significance for themselves. Different from us, we don't know what it's like to be in those bodies and have those set of senses, of the cognitive and conative senses, but they're undergoing those experiences. So, this is what, if modern material science does not deal with experiences, it's because it's written out of the ontology from the beginning. And how is that scientific? If I can't describe it in terms of numbers, it doesn't exist. Who says so? Who's laying down the rules? Is that science? Science works by rules, but it's a social process that sets the rules up. So that's what. So they need a different set of rules. Now, what we are doing is called another thing. It's called religion, and of course that's based on faith and subjective and nobody. But I want to talk about this as a science. And that we have direct perception of the self by realization. That we can clarify consciousness. And by that clarification of consciousness, not only do we understand ourselves as spiritual beings, experience ourselves as not this body. If we say I'm not the body as well, I remember the first time I tried to explain to somebody that you're not the body, say, you're trying to say I'm not me. Of course, we have this identification of the body. What causes the identification of the self with the body, or this identification of the self with the body? It's sense gratification. That's what does it. So, we have our four regulative principles. No intoxication, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling. People think of these as moral rules, rules of morality. Most religions have moral rules, and they think these are the rules you must follow. Especially the eight faiths are laying down, these are the rules. If you follow the rules, after you die, you'll go to heaven. And if you break them, after you die, you'll go to hell. That's it. That's what these rules are for. They're just reward and punishment for some future, as the communists used to say, there'll be a pie in the sky when you die, making fun of the Christians. You know? But we don't see that the regular principles are actually principles of knowledge. Poetic principles, they're principles of cognition. So we generally, there's thinking, feeling, and acting. Those are the three realms of behavior that we deal with, the thinking, feeling, of knowing things, and the realm of what's true and what's false. And then there's feelings, the emotions, aesthetics, what's ugly, what's beautiful, what's attractive, what's not attractive. And then the realm of action, and therefore there's moral action and immoral action, or legal or illegal action, like that, your good or bad action for getting your results. These are the three realms that we deal with. It's corresponding, transcendent, Sat Chit Ananda. Socrates, Plato, the good, the true, and the beautiful. These are all characteristics of the same list in the absolute truth, that known as the good. One but manifests as the good, the true, and the beautiful. And so we kind of separate them off and say, yeah, these are three different realms. So it's understandable to have that confusion, but we should look at these. We're not that separated in reality. There's one reality and manifest in different ways, but this realm of action of our regulative principles, not just rules of morality. That's what make knowledge possible. That is to say, knowledge of the science of the self. And this is what the Bhagavad Gita is talking about. So should people understand this, that when we begin to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, when we begin to clarify consciousness, so this is dealing with consciousness itself, taking seriously. We understand that consciousness is the symptom of the presence of the self. And we start to clarify that consciousness by our activities of being pure and eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, as Prabhupada said. We don't eat meat, fish, and eggs. It makes a difference of your consciousness, what you do with that. And when you and we know that we have a treatment of dealing with consciousness. Hare Krishna Maha Mantra as like a medicine for consciousness, and if we and the chanting we can start. We just do it even mechanically. Now people have complained for so long and nothing has happened, but there's a certain thing that one has to do for chanting that we've been handing. That one has to chant the Hare Krishna mantra while trying to give up offenses. In the beginning, you can chant, we don't care. But now if you want to make some advancement, then there's offenses to be avoided. And we have this list of the 10 offenses. Where to begin, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the offense from which all the other offenses spring is inattentiveness while chanting. So here we're dealing with this phenomena of attention. Attention is the focusing of consciousness. Buddhi governs attention, and buddhi is the way in which the super soul begins to affect us through buddhi. That's why Krishna consciousness is often in the Bhagavad Gita referred to as buddhi yoga. Huh? Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayatiti. So we should chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So we should, and it's good to take a vow. So you start, okay, I'll chant 1 round a day. Fine. Whatever your capacity is, chant 1 round a day. While you chant, you can be chanting Hare Krishna, and thinking of so many things. People have said to me, I get so many good ideas when I chant. So the idea is that I can chant while doing other things. That's inattentive chanting. That's not very effective. The pure stage of chanting, our mind is fixed on the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and it stays there. The clearing stage is I fix my mind on the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and then I discover somewhere down the line, after maybe 3 or 4 mantras, it's gone somewhere else. I don't know how that's happening. You can't find out when it happened. But it happened. You notice it happened. So if when you find the mind is wandering, you bring it back. And you keep there, and it goes again, you bring it back, and you don't quit. Then you're chanting on the clearing stage. Just making the consistent effort, you're chanting on the clearing stage. Now, when we're chanting on the clearing stage, the pure name is not manifest. But what's manifest is called Nam Abhasa. The dawning light of the holy name. Our Namacharya Haridas Thakur gives the example of Abhasa that at night time, the forest is a very dangerous place, and it's full of dangerous things, wild animals, thieves, dacoits, highwaymen, and bhutas, pretas, ghosts, hobgoblins, and everything. So it's dangerous. But when the dawning light is just the dawning twilight, the abhasa, the dawning twilight is in the sky, the forest becomes safe. You know that when that dawn, just the dawning light is, the sun's below the horizon, but just that dawning light, the thieves and the robbers go back to their hideouts, and the wild animals go back to their dens and lairs, and we know that Dracula goes back in his coffin, and the werewolf turns back into a human. You know, it becomes safe. Just that. So it says in the same way, he says, just this nam abhasa destroys all sinful reactions and brings one to the higher level of consciousness. It destroys sinful reactions. What was the other thing? How did he put it? I forgot now. But this, and one makes spiritual advancement. Then the pure light. With namabhasa, you can understand completely that I'm not the body. Just namabhasa. No, it gives liberation. The fruit of namabhasa, excuse me. The fruit of namabhasa is mukti. That's where Haridas Thakur got in a problem, because he was telling this to a group of Brahmins and people got upset, you know. Mere namabhasa, mukti. Because the Shuddhanam gives Krishna prema. So the namabhasa destroys all sinful action and gives mukti. So we can, all of us, get to the platform. We just have to be sincerely trying. We just have to be sincerely trying. This is the science of consciousness. It's a, you know, you're sitting there. Consciousness is there. You know what attention is. You know what, you know, your mind goes away, you're coming back. You can do it. It's doable. It's hard because you know, in fact, it's very humiliating when you discover how hard it is to concentrate the mind, you know, just on the holy name. But if one just persistently tries like this, you'll see a change in consciousness. And then, you know, everything, the world will start to look differently. The devotees will look better. Shastra will become more and more clear. You become more peaceful. And you'll see these things happen. Because what happens is that the modes of passion and the modes of ignorance, they start to diminish. And then the mode of goodness becomes established. Anyone can. This is Lord Chaitanya's mercy. You know, you don't have to go to the Himalayas and all that other stuff, which is also a dangerous place now, even more so. But we can do this. This is an experimental procedure. You just funny things to animals. You just have to make yourself the object of the experiment. And so it's you know, I mean, when I first started chanting Hare Krishna, I had these kind of reactions somewhere or other. I was lucky to really be desperate in my life and really concentrate on the holy name, and I could see changes taking place. And then you'll start to see Krishna doing things out in the world, a whole other trip. But he will. You'll be able to start to see a pattern to accidents and a pattern to coincidences, and things will happen that the hand of the Supreme will become visible to help you make advancement, whatever it is we need. But anyway, so this is a science of self-realization. And that consciousness becomes clarified by this. Right, Prabhupada has stated in the Bhagavad Gita, and again, here's another kind of decision. What is the standard of advancement of society? He says, Prabhupada writes, formerly the standard of advancement standard of the mode of goodness. Now the standard of advancement is what? Mode of passion, right? All the work, all the employment everybody has, every ambition you want, the standard of what is the standard of the mode of passion? That's true, isn't it? What is the, according to the Bhagavad Gita, what is the result of the mode of passion?
Pain.
Huh? Pain. Misery, yes, pain and misery. Guess where we're going? See, it's true. People are not becoming happy. Unless, of course, they try. What they do when the pain comes, because they don't have access to the mode of goodness, they go to the mode of ignorance. Start snorting cocaine, and marijuana is legal in many states. You know, that's what they do. And the mode of ignorance is complete misery. So suicide increases. This is our science. And it is a science. And we need to become leaders in that science. It's doable. Consciousness is there. You can watch. And now let me just one other thing about consciousness. Well, let me stop right now. Any comments about this? Yeah, I thought might be okay.
I think you answered them, but I still read them out. The first question, the person asks, Hare Krishna, could you please ask His Grace to elaborate the difference between spirit soul and super soul?
Between?
The spirit soul and super soul.
Oh, well, we'll come to that, actually, the spirit soul and the super soul.
Okay.
That's a good question, and that's the next topic.
Okay, the next one is from Ravindra Kumar Prabhu. The question is, I have heard your history of ISKCON seminar, and it brought about how some Prabhupada disciples had some anarthas which led to their spiritual mistakes. My question is, I too find those same anarthas of lust, greed, anger in me, even though after 10 years of chanting and Krishna conscious association. What advice you would give me to get rid of those anarthas and not commit spiritual fall down? Ravindra Kumar Das.
Yeah, I can only give that the basic principles of Krishna consciousness. You know, for myself, I discovered certain things from chanting, and I'll just tell you my own experience, because my first real intense experience with the holy name was really off-putting, and I thought it was bad. And then I realized it wasn't. And I think that if one just makes arrangements to try to chant the Hare Krishna mantra, anyway, you know, when I joined the movement, of course, everybody was a new devotee. All of us were inexperienced, and I didn't have really very good guidance. And japa was something you kind of did in the morning to get on with the real stuff of the day, you know, get over with. And it finally dawned on me that japa was kind of a thing in itself, and that it was really, really important. And of course, that's in all our books, but the devotees were not so much into it. So I started to try to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and really pay attention. And I noticed that when I started to really chant and pay attention, I felt an uneasiness, comfort. And I thought, my God, why is this happening? You know, I mean, I didn't know what it was there. And the more I chanted, you know, trying to pay attention, the more kind of really unease I felt. And I didn't know how to deal with And then, and I was too embarrassed to tell anybody about it. And so then I decided, well, you know, I put my commitment in the holy name. I'm just going to tolerate it and see what happens. And so I just kept chanting, and I just put up with this unease, which increased. And then one day, maybe I have after 1 or just 2 weeks of this, you know, about close, between 1 and 2 weeks, all of a sudden that unease got really, and then it just came like somebody opened a hose or something, or came like water pouring out of a fire hydrant or something. It was grief. I felt overwhelming grief. And I quickly realized what it was, that I had turned away from Krishna and I had come to the material world, and that Krishna was perfect and wonderful in all respects, and that my turning away from him was just wicked, was just like a horrible thing to do. It was like such a betrayal. And that's why I felt so bad about myself. Again, I didn't say anything. Our slogan was chant and be happy. No one said chant and feel grief. And so I figured, you know, I don't belong in the Hare Krishna movement. Somehow I'm a demon that's got in among these devotees. But still, you know, in some sense, it felt good to get it out. You know, I mean, there was a kind of a relief of tension. And then I thought, wait a minute, you know, I've turned away from Krishna, I've come to the material world, but the only reason I know this is because Prabhupada came and brought this Hare Krishna mantra to us in the West. And this meant that Krishna didn't turn away from me. That, you know, I'd appreciated the difficulty that Prabhupada went through to bring and I thought this was done for me. And therefore Krishna didn't, even though I turned away from Krishna, which was just I saw that, and it's just sheer envy, you know, just I'm not God and that's the problem, you know, something like that. That he hadn't turned away from me, and then I felt filled with gratitude. So, and I didn't talk about this for years. God, I didn't think it happened to anybody else or whatever like that. But I think whatever we need to go through, we will go through. Oh, by the way, I finally, you know, 15 or 20 years later, I realized it was bona fide. Because in the year 2000, that was the year I was the chairman of the GBC, and I realized ISKCON was going to have a very rough year. I won't get into all the details, but so I decided that I tried to get the whole GBC, look, let's go to all Vrindavan together and let's do the Kartika Vrata 64 hours a day. Just as a PR move, you couldn't beat it, but I just thought to purify, and you know, people had already made plans and stuff like that. So I did it myself. I said, okay, I'm the GBC chairman. I'll just do this Kartika Vrata. And during that Vrata, I got a hold of a book of Bhaktivinoda Thakur about chanting the holy names. And I started reading the last chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is Lord Chaitanya reciting the Shastika prayers. And somehow or other, I hadn't dawned on me what was in those chapters. First of all, Prabhupada retranslated, and the one we would always recite in the morning was an earlier, he translated them over again. And then it also describes, as Lord Chaitanya is speaking these prayers one after the other, verses one after the other, to Ramananda Roy and Svarupa Damodar, his confidential associates. He's doing that, and he is describing what Lord Chaitanya felt. So when you get to the first prayer, is like, whoa, Chaito, Dharpana, Marjanam, all these wonderful things that happen when the victorious. The second prayer, Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shakti Tatarbita Niyamita Smarane Nakala. You, Tavakripat, your mercy is that you have so many names. And you've put all your potencies in that name, and you've made it easy to chant. Tava Kripa Bhagavan. And Mamapi Durdaiva Midvishamiha. But my misfortune, there's a contrast in that verse. Your mercy and my misfortune. That even in spite of that, I'm still not attracted to, I have no taste for this chanting. And when Lord chanted, it says he experienced Dainya and Vishada. Humility and grief. And I thought, my God, it's bona fide.
Which year was this?
Huh? That was the year 2000. I thought, it's bona fide, And so that's why I'm talking about it now, because otherwise it would still be we're bona fide. That's what he felt. He felt. And then if you read through this Dainya, every verse it increases. And then of course you see how this leads in the next verse. Trinada pi suniche nad. I've lower than the straw on the street, more tall. And that's when I began to realize, what a wonderful thing it is to actually cultivate humility. And and that as humility increases, love of God increases. I mean, all the way through the humility is there. So that was my own experience. As I said, I didn't have a whole lot of proper guidance in the beginning, and I didn't talk about it with anybody else. But it was such a relief to find out it was bona fide, to feel that way. So in one sense, Lord Chaitanya has, with the cultivation of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, that's our medicine. And we do a few things to take it right. It's good to chant with a vow. If we're initiated, we've taken a vow to do 16. But if you're not initiated, you make a vow. Okay, I'll chant 2 rounds a day, but just do those well. And do it with attention, and keep the vow, and then increase as you can. You'll find things start to happen. This is a science of consciousness. It clarifies consciousness. When that happens, when the consciousness becomes clarified to a certain extent, something else happens. And what happens is you begin to get contact with the Supersoul. Because the Atma and the Paramatma are both. In other words, knowing Krishna, at least as far as Paramatma goes, is something like knowing yourself. Because this was the other thing that gradually began to happen. I realized one day that I was absolutely convinced about Krishna's presence, his existence. And I worried about being convinced about that. If you have enough academic training, you'll be worried about having convictions. And I thought, how am I so convinced about? I just had no doubt whatsoever that the Lord is there, and He's in my heart, and He's in the world. None whatsoever. And I was worried about that. Because I couldn't see how I had any right to that. And I actually went to, at the time, I had a disciple, she's passed away now, but she had a PhD in philosophy from Bryn Mawr, and she was an Anglican theologian before she became a devotee. And I talked to her about it, and she said, just think of it as a blessing. And then there was a distinction which I never heard between certainty and certitude. But you have certitude, if you want to call it a certainty. But anyway, that's some probably technical. 'Cause I think this is an experience that's genuinely spiritual. People have this certainty or certitude, if you want to call it that, about Krishna. But I can explain it now, because knowing Krishna is like knowing yourself. I mean, he is the self of the self. The reflexive pronoun is there, and there's an overlap between, there's some correspondence and congruence between the individual self and the super self. And so that reason I became completely convinced about Krishna consciousness, so that we will encounter Krishna. Knowing Krishna is something like knowing yourself. And then I began to understand something I'd spent a lot of time on before I was a devotee, the ontological argument for the existence of God, the ontological proof that God exists so truly cannot be as not existing. If you think that God might exist or might not exist, you're not thinking of God, because that's this or that. This computer might exist. This book might exist or not exist. This table might. But God, that's not what we mean by God. If you know what we mean by God, He exists without the possibility of not existing. That's sort of the idea. And I could see where that came from. That degree of conviction that people have. So. This is a science of self-realization. It is on the standard of advancement of the mode of goodness. We owe it to ourselves as human beings to do this, and especially we owe it to the rest of society, because otherwise things are going to get very rough. The result in the mode of passion is misery. And we have to bring about a change in consciousness. Nobody, as far as I know, really knows how to do this in a systematic and easily available way than Krishna consciousness. That's my own conviction. So this is vijnana. This is direct perception. And Krishna begins to appear, and anyway, the world also starts to look like a different kind of a place than what you may think it may be. Anyway, any questions now? We can finish up. Comments? Prabhu? Want to, Mike?
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the illuminating, wonderful class. I have two questions. First question, at our level, which one is more important, humility or tolerance? Because humility looks like a far out concept. Means it's really very high level thing. So that we
they sort of go together. Trinada Pisunejena, that's the first one, humility, which is only realism. How big is a spirit soul? 1/10,000, the tip of the head is, 1/4 of an angstrom unit. It's the size of a spirit soul. If it's a human hair. So we're very tiny. It's just realism. To me, that's easier than I think humility comes first, and then this Tarori vasu hishnuna, like a tree. Notice with the tree, it's two things. It puts up with everything and still gives fruit and shade or whatever to others. Reciprocate. You know, the example is the woodman comes to cut down the tree. First he takes a nap under its shade, then he has a lunch from its fruit, then he cuts it down and the tree gives these things. So that to me is harder than just being humble.
Sure.
Anyway, but we got to get there, huh?
Thank you. And the next question was how to see Krishna's hands. Like you talked about next, wonderful thing. How to see Krishna's hands in everything. Like for example, there are some events that might happen and then maybe we get more facility to serve Krishna, or it's good or bad. There is some, it acts like a catalyst or some event that might help us to. So how to exactly see Krishna's hand? Because
it depends on the context, what it is, and whether you recognize it or not. Sometimes you're not sure. Sometimes it looks frustrating. You know, Prabhupada so long tried to do so many things, and it seemed like he was frustrated. He wanted to come to the West. It took a long time. He didn't finally show up until 1965. And Krishna's in charge of timing too. You know, it wasn't the right time. If Prabhupada had, he castigates himself in public that I was told by my spiritual master when I was a young man to preach in the West, but I was so entangled with family life that I didn't do anything until my old age. But just imagine if he showed up in America in 1956, you know, 55. He came at the right time. So sometimes Krishna's just keeping somebody on ice and doing, you can't always know exactly what Krishna wants. But if we're willing to take whatever we need to do, we're trying to advance in Krishna consciousness, He'll let us know what it is. I'm completely. He's not in the business of blocking our advancement. And sometimes He's not subtle, not subtle at all. Rather shockingly obvious what He's doing, and so it makes it hard for you to evade actually what He's asking of you. So we just have to be. To me, what we can control is our own mentality and our own attitude and our own desire for advancement, and really. You know, to me at least, it's appreciating that I have come in contact with devotees, that I have some Krishna consciousness, that I know my criminal history before I became a devotee. I'm totally not worthy of any of this. That it's Krishna's mercy, and that I feel thankful for what I have, and to take full advantage of it. That's what we need to be in that sort of attitude, I think. And remember, just humility is just realism. That's all it is. And if we're getting proud as Prabhu, if you want to see somebody, you know, think of how great Krishna is. That's one thing. You know, just imagine the difference. You know, who am I? And Lord Brahma is 1/10,000th the tip of a hair in size too, when it comes down to it. That's his condition too. We're all very small compared to Krishna. Yeah?
Thanks, Prabhu, for the nice class. I'm just going to ask this question on behalf of some new visitors. There's a two-part question. One, you mentioned Krishna consciousness very often in your class. Could you, and you also mentioned science. When we think of science, we think the study of matter. But you mentioned that Krishna consciousness is a science. So can you explain what's Krishna consciousness? What is the science behind it? And how can we apply this science to reach the goal of knowing who we are and who God is?
Yeah, well, to say something is a science means that something can be practically applied. But it's the science of dealing with consciousness. As I said earlier, material science deals with matter and abstracts from the world in terms of numbers. And that's very useful to do. It becomes scientism when they think if it can't be expressed in terms of numbers, it doesn't exist, or it's not worth considering. But with consciousness, it's a science of consciousness. And consciousness, we learn, is the radiance or the current of spirit. The consciousness does not arise from matter. We have this certain guide. People are always trying to figure out how you got matter and how consciousness comes out. You dig around in the brain, you can't find consciousness. You can maybe, stimulate some neurons and somebody has an experience, but you can't get from the neurons to the experience because they're different ontological categories. And it's actually the consciousness which creates matter more than the other way around, But Krishna has brought them together. As Prabhupada had explained it in the early days in the BI, both matter and life come from life. And you can't get rid of the life or the consciousness. So our Krishna consciousness is a way to deal with the clarification of consciousness. And we have a treatment for contaminated consciousness, which is the application of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which Cheto Darpana Marjanam, the first thing it does is consciousness is like a mirror that reflects something. The mirror right now is dirty. You start to cleanse the mirror, and then all things start to become revealed. You become revealed, and then God becomes revealed, the world becomes revealed. And it's very describe. It's a little bit difficult, but it's, you want to do any job that's worthwhile, it's a little difficult. I mean, if you're a materials scientist, you got to spend hours and hours and hours of test tubes or whatever and cataloging everything and keeping track of it and keeping losing sleep, losing your notebooks. Anyway, there's difficulty with everything. This is difficulty for something that's worthwhile, very worthwhile, the most worthwhile thing we can do. How can we, consciousness, I mean, this is our world. The world we live in is a world that comes into us through our consciousness. Why do we allow it to be full of garbage and junk and uncontrolled and it's wild that we don't deal with the most immediate thing. And then these ideas that I'm not this body, that all these things will become clear to us. And and because there's a practical application, that we have people who can give guidance, do this next, do this wrong, do this, try that, we know how it's done. You have to want it, that's all. If all you want is a bigger paycheck, then maybe, it's not what you're looking for. Yeah?
Thank you, Prabhu. It was really enlightening to hear your experience about when you were studying impersonalist Bhagavad Gita interpretations, and then you said that you found that surrender to Krishna is the conclusion. So my question is related to impersonalism, because generally as practitioners, some of our impersonalistic ideas would have been either crushed by the practice of bhakti and the whole Krishna conscious process, or we may not wander through that side because Mayavad Bhashya, Sunebe Hoilo Sarna, so we don't want to wander there, to stick here. But as your experience indicates, you already studying the impersonalism, you just ruled it out altogether. So I want to ask now, in the modern world, when we are presenting Krishna consciousness to around, they may not be having Mayavad conception at all, but it may be impersonalism in some form or the other. So what kind of impersonalism it pervades now in 21st century? It may not be Shankara's Advaita or that form, but we may have to deal with it.
Well, I mean, people may not know Shankaracharya anymore or Advaita Vedanta, although I think it's still pretty common around everywhere. Most people who are ask most people, are they spiritual? They say yes. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. By spiritual. And they, there's something big, there's something there, there's something out there, there's something more. It's like a very uneducated in personalism. But they tend toward it. Personalism is kind of, to me, it's like primitive religion, animism, and it's not that impersonalism is wrong as such. It's just partial, because people have a part of the truth, then they want to blow it up to be the whole truth. But because they have a part of it, it looks valid, but it's just not the key to all and everything. Just like material science, it works. So then now we got the keys to the kingdom. There's the same way with Mayavada or impersonalism. There's some truth to it, and we incorporate it. I mean, we know that the Brahma Jyoti is the effulgence of Krishna. People have turned away from personalism. Well, I tried to tell a guy that God is a person. He says, people stink. And I realized there's going to be a problem. He hated himself. He hated his kids. He hated his wife. I mean, what are you going to do? People have bad experiences with other people, and they want to go to something that's like, wow, there's no people here anymore, So, all a devotee can do is try to say, well, not everybody's like that. But anyway, that's sometimes hard to do. But, yeah.
So I have a quick question. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya's interaction with different religionist group, for example, Buddhism, there was a big debate and he defeated. Also in Jain and also Islam, and many prominent religions have been described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But I could not find anything interaction with Christianity. But it has been said, like in Kerala and Goa, there are very prominent churches before Lord Chaitanya. So, is there any scholars that time where they met Lord Chaitanya, or is there any other scriptures other than Chaitanya Charitamrita described?
Not as far as I know. I have seen no mention of Christianity anywhere. Yeah. Do you know of any, Prabhu? Yeah, Vaisheshika? I don't think so. It's just not mentioned at all, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah. From you, world outside. Okay.
So, Prabhuji, if we think about the end of all the verses, it may be a general question. Like I'm talking about the ultimate goal of in Shikshashraka is Aslishya Vapa, whether you embrace me or you ignore me, I just serve you.
Mm-hmm.
But then the concept of feeling in separation is what the Virah Bhav is considered as success in our Sampradaya. But if suppose if we consider this whole thing, and if we sell it, and if we tell anybody that this crying is what is the result of it, then it doesn't sound so nice. Like even in this world, like, oh, we are going to separate and we are going to cry for whole life. But then how do we reconcile with that and understand that that's the topmost thing?
People don't understand spiritual feelings. And what devotees experience is increasing intensity of love for Krishna. And Prabhupada uses the phrase associating with Krishna through strong feelings of separation. It sounds like it's almost contradictory. But you're associating, and they relish this sense of separation because it adds to the intensity of love for Krishna. And so you're associating. These are spiritual feelings which are very, very elevated. And as we advance, you'll be able to get an appreciation for them more and more. That's all I can say about that. Because the only way to understand a feeling is to have it. And these kinds of feelings are extremely elevated. But those, you might say, the real connoisseurs of spiritual emotions, variegated, ever-increasing bliss, have this idea of something that even transcends the difference between union and separation to something that's like unifies opposites. Yeah, it's really postgraduate spiritual life. Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
Prabhu, like I think last answer was so. Thank you very much. I think yesterday class and today also, like Bhakti Vedanta purports, the words were dancing actually. So
thank you so much. Thank you for being such a good audience.
So
and stimulating too. Huh?
So I think your experiences are much ahead than what we can even ask few of the things. But all this, as devotees like us or people who are aspiring to progress in this path, as you have all this experience of what you said, Atma and Paramatma, not that we will reach there. How did the role of the parampara came into, how was the, parampara helped, like the dependent? Can you emphasize on, if the destination is Krishna, how is your experience on the parampara helped you to?
Oh, well, yeah, sure, because the Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, it's all their mercy, that gives us there. And these devotees are Krishna's eternal associates. Krishna's never alone. He's always surrounded by his devotees. I mean, let me just conclude with one important point, that Krishna, God has a religion. He worships devotees. That's what Lord Chaitanya is showing, that this is first of all, God thinks it's better to be a devotee than to be God. And so in order to taste that, he takes the form of Lord Chaitanya. So that as Lord, he can fully appreciate his devotee, the Srimati Radharani. So that's his religion. So spiritual bliss is ever increasing because of the interactions. Down here, those people who are enjoying with Krishna and experiencing what's really going on have taken the time to bring more people. And that's why we're here today. We're sort of in training for entrance into the party. The very big party that's always and to me it's a very interesting thing that Krishna is surrounded by incredibly, unbelievably perfect, wonderful devotees. And he still wants a relationship with each one of us. He sees something in me and something in you that he wants. Because each individual is unique, that's one of a kind. And that we have some contribution to make toward the divine life. And he wants to bring us into it. It's the ocean of transcendental bliss. Anandam buddhi vardhanam, it's always increasing. And that's why Krishna wants us. So he actually... There's something, we don't maybe see it in ourselves, but there's something that he values. And that if we're developed fully, we can make that contribution. Okay, we'll stop there. Very well. Okay.
Ravindra Prabhu, you've given us a lifetime of wisdom seemingly condensed in a way that we can apply it. I wrote down so many sutras that I could practically live off for a few lifetimes. I mean, just as an example, this last one, difficulty for something that's worthwhile, when you describing austerity basically, and another one, if you think God exists or doesn't exist, you're not thinking of God. And these are so useful, and it's knowledge, but it's put in such a way that we can actually, it's a fulcrum, it's a way that we can actually think about applying it ourselves and use it in teaching other people. And you've been, the last 2 days have, for those who have attended these last couple of days of seminars, we've definitely gotten enough to live off of for a long time, and I've felt this was a life-changing experience. So we want to thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. I hope I speak for everyone. I know I do, for making the trip all the way out here to ISKCON of Silicon Valley and just sitting with us and speaking from your heart about your deep realizations and giving us a perspective of the Shastra that will help us to come to the next level.
Well, thank you very much.
Hare
I don't think
Krishna.
I would have done it without you.
Please, a little more. Haribol.